Bullies knock out human teen, but his blood awakens a deadly secret. Malcolm Ray rushed through the halls of Galactic Academy Primus, his heart racing as the echoes of his footsteps bounced off the smooth metallic walls. The academy was quiet now, just before the next class started. The only sound was the hum of the artificial lighting above him, a soft blue glow that illuminated the academy's pristine corridors. Everything about this place was sleek, advanced, and alien. Malcolm, however, felt anything but at home. His backpack, worn and faded, hung lopsided over one shoulder, the weight of dog-eared textbooks inside seeming to pull him down. The other students walked by with digital tablets in their hands, their smooth, glowing screens casting soft light on their azure skin. Their eyes, bright and sharp, reflected the academy's lights as if they were made of pure starlight. They moved with a fluid grace that made Malcolm feel even more out of place. He wasn't just any student at this academy. He was the only human. And every day, it felt like a reminder that he was an outsider. His pale skin and unruly brown hair were the least of his problems. It wasn't just the fact that he was human. It was the way the other students looked at him, like he didn't belong. The Ceruleans, the dominant species at the academy, made it clear they didn't see him as their equal. They had accepted one human student per cycle, and that human was him. "Watch it, dirt skin," came a sharp voice from behind him. Malcolm stiffened. He didn't need to look. He knew exactly who it was. Krell, the tallest and most aggressive of the Cerulean boys who made his life miserable. Krell's eyes narrowed, his bright cerulean skin glowing even more brightly in the artificial light. He towered over Malcolm, his muscular frame blocking his path. "Just trying to get to class," Malcolm mumbled, adjusting his glasses. They always slipped down his nose at the most inconvenient times. "Yeah." Krell's voice was filled with mockery. "Maybe you think you belong in advanced classes, huh? Too bad we're here to remind you that you're just a dirty human." Malcolm clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the words. He had learned quickly that engaging with them only made things worse. His father had always told him, "You're representing all of humanity there, son. Make us proud, but more importantly, make it through." The Ceruleans surrounded him now, blocking his way to the next class. He could feel their eyes on him, piercing and condescending. This was just how things went at the academy. The faculty ignored the bullying, treating it as part of the natural social hierarchy. After all, the Ceruleans were far superior in many ways. They were stronger, smarter, and had mastered technologies far beyond human understanding. "Let him pass," a voice suddenly interrupted. Malcolm turned, surprised. The voice belonged to Dorn, Krell's friend, and his tone was more playful than usual. Dorn had always been one of the more harmless Ceruleans, but that didn't mean he didn't like making Malcolm uncomfortable. Malcolm seized the moment. This was his chance to escape. With a quick glance, he sidestepped Krell and pushed past the group. He wasn't going to let them make him late. His heart thudded in his chest, but he managed to slip past them, his backpack bouncing slightly with every step. "Where are you going, dirt skin?" Krell's voice called after him. Malcolm ignored him. The last thing he needed was to escalate this. He pushed open the door to his next class, the sound of it slamming behind him somehow comforting. He was safe, at least for now. The room was mostly empty, with just a few other students seated at their desks, their glowing eyes focused on their devices. Malcolm sat at his usual spot near the back of the room, setting his old textbooks on the desk in front of him. He tried not to make eye contact with anyone. But as usual, the moment he sat down, he felt the weight of their gazes. Malcolm was different. He was the only human in a sea of Ceruleans and other alien species, and that made him the subject of both fascination and ridicule. He was here as part of a political gesture, a symbolic acceptance of diversity. He wasn't really wanted here, and he knew it. The classroom was filled with alien voices speaking in languages Malcolm barely understood. He kept his head down, listening as the teacher, a Cerulean professor with skin like polished jade, began the lesson. Xenobiology, a subject that had fascinated him back on Earth, was a required class. But for the other students, it was just another boring lecture. For Malcolm, it was a chance to prove he belonged, even if it didn't always feel that way. He opened his textbook, but the words blurred in front of his eyes. His mind kept drifting back to Krell and his friends. It wasn't just the bullying. It was the way they looked at him, like he was some kind of experiment or curiosity. It was the feeling that no matter how hard he tried, he'd never be able to fit in. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. The other students quickly packed up and filed out, leaving Malcolm alone for a brief moment. He gathered his books, his hands trembling slightly. "Malcolm Ray." A voice interrupted his thoughts. He looked up, startled, and saw Professor Sela, a tall cerulean with silver eyes, standing at his desk. "Could I have a word with you?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. Malcolm swallowed hard, wondering what this was about. Maybe she was going to speak to him about his performance in class, or maybe she had noticed the way the other students treated him. He followed her to the side of the room, away from the students who had already gathered in the hallway. "Is something wrong, Professor?" he asked, unsure of what to expect. She looked at him, her silver eyes focused and calculating. "You've been here for 6 months, Malcolm, and you've done well in your studies. But I've been watching you. The other students," she paused, as if trying to find the right words. "The way they treat you, it's not right. It's more than just teasing. It's exclusion. Bullying." Malcolm's heart sank. He had been trying to ignore it, but hearing it from someone else made it feel even more real. "I know," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "But there's nothing anyone can do. It's just how it is." Professor Sela frowned. "Maybe not now, but don't let them define you, Malcolm. You're more than just a token human here. You have potential. Don't let their narrow-mindedness hold you back." Her words stung, but they also sparked something inside him, a tiny spark of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe he could prove that he belonged here. But as he left the room, heading toward the next class, the weight of his own thoughts settled back in. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he wanted to fit in, he was always going to be different. And that difference was about to change everything. Malcolm's heart pounded in his chest as he made his way through the dimly lit corridors of the academy. The day had been like every other, filled with whispers and sidelong glances. The Ceruleans were at it again, teasing, laughing, trying to remind him that he was nothing more than a curiosity. He had hoped for a quiet, uneventful walk to his next class, but as he turned the corner, he found himself face to face with Krell and his friends once again. The familiar knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. There was no escaping them now. Krell stood with his usual smirk, flanked by Dorn and Drex, his 2 lackeys. Malcolm tried to step around them, but Krell blocked his way with a slow, deliberate movement. "Going somewhere, dirt skin?" Krell's voice was laced with malice, and his glowing blue eyes narrowed in that way Malcolm had come to recognize as dangerous. "You really think you belong here, don't you? With the rest of us? We're all made for greatness. You're just a mistake." Malcolm's breath caught in his throat. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to make it worse. But the words stung. They always did. His father's advice echoed in his head, "Don't fight back. You're here for a reason. Make it through." "Look, I just need to get to class," Malcolm muttered, his voice unsteady as he pushed up his glasses, which had slipped down his nose. He tried to step around Krell again, but the Cerulean stepped forward, blocking his path once more. "No," Krell growled. "Not until you've learned your place. You think humans are the future? Think again. Your species can't even survive in a world like this. Let me show you how fragile you really are." Before Malcolm could react, Krell's hand shot out, grabbing him by the collar of his jacket. A hard jerk, and Malcolm was pulled into the group of Ceruleans. His textbooks fell to the floor with a loud thud, scattering across the hallway. His heart raced as panic rose in his chest. "Please," Malcolm whispered, trying to control the tremble in his voice. "I don't want any trouble. You're going to learn what happens when you think you can walk among us, human." Dorn snickered, and Drex laughed along with him. Malcolm's pulse thudded in his ears as the group started to drag him down the corridor. His feet stumbled over the polished floor, his mind racing. He'd been in this situation before, but never this far, never this close to the maintenance area. The Forbidden Zone. This was a place students weren't allowed to enter, a place the academy kept sealed off. The last thing Malcolm wanted was to end up in trouble because of them. "No," he protested, his voice shaking. "That's a restricted zone. We'll get caught. We'll get in trouble." Krell scoffed. "Only if someone reports it, dirt skin. And who's going to believe you over us?" They reached the maintenance elevator at the end of the corridor, an area that always felt colder, darker, as though the academy itself was hiding something. The elevator doors slid open with a soft hiss. Dorn grinned, pressing his hand against the scanner beside the door. The screen flickered briefly before a green light flashed, and the door slid open. Malcolm tried to break free, his heart thumping loudly in his chest. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This was something else, something worse. But Krell's grip tightened on his arm, forcing him into the elevator. The doors closed with a soft ding, and the elevator began its descent. The walls were lined with dim, flickering lights, casting long shadows across the floor. The air was colder here, thick with the scent of rust and machinery. Malcolm's stomach churned. He knew this wasn't just a prank. This was something else entirely. This is the perfect place for a human to feel at home, Drex jeered, pushing Malcolm forward. Dark, ancient, and completely out of your league. Malcolm swallowed hard, trying to control his breathing. His mind raced. I have to get out of here. I can't let them do this to me. I need to get back to class. I don't belong here. But the doors opened, and they shoved him out into a narrow corridor filled with exposed conduits and industrial pipes. The temperature dropped another few degrees, and Malcolm shivered. The place looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The walls were covered in a thick layer of dust, and the floor was uneven, covered in rusted grates and debris. We'll see how long you last down here, dirt skin, Krell said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Let's see how tough you are when you're out of your element. They pushed him forward, and with each shove, Malcolm's heart seemed to race faster. He wasn't just a target anymore. He was isolated, trapped. He wanted to scream, but all he could do was try to keep his balance as the Ceruleans taunted him. This is just the beginning, Krell said ominously. Let's see how long you last when we break you. A push to the left, another shove to the right. They were pushing him into a corner, like predators circling their prey. Every time he tried to escape, they kept him right where they wanted him. Malcolm stumbled, the floor beneath him slick with dust, and before he knew it, Krell shoved him hard enough to send him flying into a metal pillar. His glasses flew off his face, and the impact left him dazed. His nose bled freely, dripping onto the cold metal floor. You leak red, dirt skin, Drex remarked, sounding almost impressed. Malcolm didn't respond. He pushed himself to his knees, trying to steady himself. His vision was blurry without his glasses, but he could still make out the ancient control panel in front of him. It was old, covered in dust and grime. He had no idea what it did, but in his dazed state, his blood dripped from his nose, landing on the surface of the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. The world seemed to slow as Malcolm wiped his blood from his face. Then, a low hum filled the air, and the dust on the panel began to tremble. Glowing symbols appeared, lighting up the old metal surface, one by one, like a sequence of alien code. What is this? Dorn whispered, stepping back. I don't know, Krell said, his voice growing tense. Did you see that? Malcolm stared at the panel, feeling an odd sense of disbelief. What was happening? He had no idea, but something was changing, something powerful. And then, a rumble from beneath the floor made his stomach flip. The wall in front of him slid open with a mechanical groan, revealing a dark chamber beyond. Inside stood a humanoid figure, tall and imposing, its metal body gleaming in the dim light. Its eyes, bright red and piercing, flickered to life, focusing directly on Malcolm. The robot stepped forward, its voice booming as it spoke. Human DNA recognized. Primary protocol activated. Awaiting command, Master. The Ceruleans froze, their eyes wide with shock. The robot turned its gaze to them, and its mechanical voice crackled through the cold air. Threat assessment initiated. Hostile entities detected. Awaiting further instructions. Malcolm, still trembling from the pain in his nose and the shock of the moment, stared at the towering machine in disbelief. This was no ordinary piece of equipment. The robot was alive, and it was waiting for him. Krell's bravado faltered. What is that thing? He whispered, his arrogance replaced by fear. The robot's eyes glowed brighter, fixing on Malcolm. It was ready to protect him, but was he ready to control it? The world around Malcolm seemed to slow as he stared at the towering robot. His nose throbbed with pain, the blood still dripping onto the floor, but it felt like his mind was a million miles away, lost in the sheer impossibility of what was happening. The last thing he had expected today was to activate something like this. The robot, its sleek metal frame reflecting the dim lights of the maintenance level, stood motionless for a moment. Its red eyes flickered, scanning the surroundings. It tilted its head slightly, its glowing gaze locking onto Malcolm. The deep, resonating voice that followed made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Human DNA recognized. Primary protocol activated. Awaiting command, Master. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and chilling. Malcolm blinked rapidly, trying to focus, his heart hammering in his chest. This was real. The robot, which looked like it belonged to a forgotten age of war and conquest, had just addressed him as its master. But he didn't feel like a master. He felt like a lost kid in a nightmare. What are you? Malcolm stammered, his voice hoarse from the shock. He took a cautious step back, but the robot remained unmoving, its attention entirely focused on him. The three Ceruleans behind him were just as stunned, their once confident expressions replaced by confusion and fear. Designation, Guardian-class combat unit. The robot announced, its voice deep and mechanical. Primary function, protection of human assets during the Reclamation Wars. Awaiting further instructions, Master. Malcolm felt a chill run down his spine as he tried to process what he was hearing. Human assets? The Reclamation Wars? What did this robot mean by that? Why was it activating now, after all these years? His mind raced, but the answers were elusive. Master. Drex's voice broke through Malcolm's thoughts, his voice trembling. What does it mean? Master? Why does it say that? Krell's voice, though full of disbelief, had regained some of its usual arrogance. This is a joke, right? You're telling me a robot from some ancient war is waiting for you to give it orders? His glowing cerulean eyes were wide with shock, but there was still a hint of disbelief in his voice. The words Guardian class echoed in Malcolm's mind. He had heard rumors about ancient human tech, about how some of the oldest and most dangerous technology was hidden from the galaxy, sealed away after the Reclamation Wars ended. But this? A robot, waiting for his command. This was something beyond any knowledge he had. Malcolm looked down at the floor, his blood still pooling beneath him. How did it know who I was? It wasn't just random. This robot was connected to humanity's lost history. It had been waiting for someone like him. Krell's voice pulled him back from his thoughts. You're telling me this thing is yours now, Dirtskin? Malcolm's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't meant to claim ownership, but the robot had called him its master, and the Ceruleans were growing more fearful by the second. The robot shifted slightly, its mechanical joints making a soft clicking sound as it bent down, its red eyes still fixed on Malcolm. It raised one massive metallic hand and gestured toward the Ceruleans. Hostile entities detected. It repeated, its voice echoing with an eerie calm. Defense protocols activated. Awaiting commands to neutralize threats. Malcolm's stomach twisted. His instincts screamed at him to stop the robot before it did something it would regret. But then, he remembered Krell's earlier words, the taunts, the violence, the bullying. The group of Ceruleans had tormented him for months. His fists clenched at his sides. This is not how humans are supposed to react. This is not who I am. Stop, Malcolm shouted, surprising himself with the force of his voice. He raised his hands, trying to prevent the robot from taking action. His heart raced as he turned back to the machine. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Just stop. The robot hesitated, its glowing red eyes flickering as if it were processing his command. For a moment, the world was silent, the only sound the soft hum of the ancient technology surrounding them. Command acknowledged. Adjusting threat response parameters. The robot stepped back, lowering its hand, and the tension in the air seemed to lift. Krell, Dorn, and Drex stood frozen against the wall, their faces pale, their earlier bravado vanishing completely. Malcolm could see the fear in their eyes. They were no longer the ones in control. Malcolm swallowed hard, his heart still pounding. He felt a strange sense of power, but it didn't feel good. He had stopped the robot from attacking them, but that didn't change the fact that the Ceruleans were still a threat. His tormentors had just been given a terrifying reminder of what could happen if they pushed too far. What is that thing? Krell finally managed, his voice low and filled with awe and fear. His glowing eyes were wide, reflecting the eerie red light of the robot. How did you activate it? Malcolm wiped the blood from his nose, trying to steady his breathing. He didn't know how he had activated it. But what he did know was that this robot wasn't just some piece of ancient technology. It was alive, and it was waiting for him. I didn't mean to, Malcolm said quietly, his voice trembling slightly. I don't know how I activated it. but I don't want to hurt anyone. The robot, whose massive form still towered over them, bent down slightly, as though it were studying Malcolm. Its red eyes softened, just a touch, before it spoke again. I am programmed to protect humanity. Primary directive: protect human life, uphold human legacy. Malcolm's mind raced, trying to piece together the implications of what the robot was saying. Protect humanity? He was just one person, a single human student at an academy filled with alien species. How could this robot have been waiting for him? What did this mean for the future? Krell shifted uncomfortably. What now? He muttered, glancing nervously at the robot, then at Malcolm. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar: fear. Are you going to make it kill us? Malcolm took a deep breath, his fingers still shaking. He felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him, the enormity of the decision before him. I can't let this robot hurt them, he thought. But at the same time, I can't let them get away with what they've done. No, he said firmly, his voice steady. But you're going to leave. Right now? And you're never going to touch me again. The three Ceruleans exchanged nervous glances, their skin paling even more. Malcolm could see the fear in their eyes as they backed away, slowly, unsure of what to do next. We'll leave, Krell muttered, his voice tight. This never happened. With a final, terrified glance at Malcolm and the robot, Krell, Dorn, and Drex quickly bolted toward the elevator. The doors slid open, and they disappeared into the hall, leaving Malcolm standing in the dim, cold room, surrounded by the hum of ancient machinery. The robot, Sentinel, remained silent, its red eyes still focused on Malcolm. Thank you, Malcolm whispered, feeling a strange connection to the machine. He wasn't sure if it understood, but somehow, he knew it did. This robot, this guardian, wasn't just a tool of war. It was his ally, and together, they might just change everything. The maintenance level was silent now, save for the low hum of the robot's mechanical systems. Malcolm stood motionless, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like a heavy cloak. The bullies were gone, but the feeling of being watched, of something far bigger unfolding around him, lingered. He turned to face the towering robot, still standing like an impenetrable sentinel, its red eyes glowing faintly in the low light. Sentinel. Malcolm's voice cracked slightly as he spoke, but the words came out steady, laced with awe. What are you? The robot's head tilted slightly, its glowing eyes locking onto him with unnerving precision. For a moment, Malcolm thought it would remain silent, as if contemplating the answer. Then the voice, deep, metallic, and unmistakably authoritative, came once again. I am Guardian-class combat unit. Primary function: protection of human assets during the Reclamation Wars, it stated, its tone unwavering. Awaiting further instructions, Master. Malcolm's heart pounded in his chest. Human assets? He wasn't even sure what that meant. But the word Reclamation Wars felt significant. He had read about it in his history lessons. It was a period of galactic upheaval, though most of the details were either classified or blurred by time. Humanity had been involved, but the true extent of their role had been wiped from the historical records. What? Reclamation Wars? Malcolm asked, his voice barely a whisper, as though the words themselves held the key to a buried past. The robot's red eyes flickered briefly, as if processing the question, before responding in the same mechanical cadence. The Reclamation Wars were a series of galactic conflicts spanning several decades, during which humanity played a pivotal role. Human forces led the charge against the Void Dominion, a coalition of alien species bent on domination. Humanity's combat prowess and rapid adaptability shifted the tide of the war. The victory was hard-won, but the aftermath, the Galactic Council feared humanity's potential. Malcolm blinked, absorbing the weight of the words. The Galactic Council? What does that have to do with me? With this? He gestured toward the robot, still trying to process the surreal situation. Sentinel's red eyes softened, as though understanding the confusion in Malcolm's voice. The Galactic Council, in its fear of humanity's rise, sought to erase the legacy of the Reclamation Wars. To prevent human influence from growing beyond control, they quarantined Earth, altered historical records, and buried technological advancements that exceeded current galactic standards. Malcolm's head swirled. Buried? Erased? But why? Why would they do that? Malcolm murmured, his voice barely audible. Humanity helped win the war. We should be celebrated. Why would they hide that from the galaxy? The robot's response was direct and emotionless, yet it carried an eerie weight. Humanity's rapid evolution threatened the established order. The Council feared that if humanity were to fully awaken its potential, it could disrupt the balance of power. Therefore, your history, your technology, was sealed away to keep your species from advancing too quickly to prevent the rise of a new galactic order under human leadership. The implications of this hit Malcolm like a punch to the stomach. Humanity had been kept in the dark for centuries. He took a step back, trying to absorb it all. So, they've been lying to everyone? About everything? The robot did not answer immediately, but its presence seemed to become more imposing, as though it understood the gravity of the moment. The long silence hung between them like a heavy fog. Yes, Sentinel finally responded. Your species was deliberately kept isolated. Your technological advances, your genetic superiority, were hidden from the galaxy. Human progress was stifled, relegated to myths and whispers. Malcolm's mind spun with a whirlwind of emotions, rage, confusion, and disbelief. The reality of it all was too much to process. He was part of something much larger than just a scholarship student in a prestigious academy. He was part of the last, forgotten remnants of a once great civilization, a civilization that had been wiped from history. Then why was I chosen to come here? Malcolm asked, his voice cracking with frustration. Why was I allowed to even enroll at the academy if they've been hiding everything about humanity? Sentinel's eyes flickered again, the faintest hint of what might be called understanding flashing in its mechanical gaze. You were selected, Malcolm Ray, because you are a direct descendant of General Kellen Ray, a key figure in the Reclamation Wars. Your bloodline activates this unit. Malcolm froze, his breath catching in his throat. General Kellen Ray, he whispered. That's my last name. The robot nodded once, its voice calm and unwavering. Correct. The genetic signature of General Kellen Ray was pivotal in the activation of this facility. The systems, including myself, were keyed to respond only to the descendants of the general. The weight of the revelation hit Malcolm harder than anything else. He wasn't just any human student here. He wasn't just a random candidate for diversity or political show. He was the descendant of a war hero, someone who had played a crucial role in humanity's past, a past that had been buried, forgotten. The Ceruleans had made fun of him, bullied him, treated him like an outsider. But in that moment, Malcolm realized that the Academy had chosen him for a far different reason than he had ever imagined. He was more than just the token human in an alien school. His existence here, his very presence, had been orchestrated as part of something much, much bigger. That's why they've been watching me. Malcolm murmured. That's why I'm here, because of my bloodline? Sentinel nodded again, its voice unwavering. Yes, you were brought here to awaken the legacy of humanity, to unlock what was hidden for centuries. The Academy was built atop this site, a secret human military base repurposed as an educational institution to monitor and potentially access these sealed areas. Malcolm's mind raced. The Academy wasn't just an educational institution. It was a cover-up. The walls, the grand halls, the pristine classrooms, they were all part of a facade. Beneath it all, hidden in the deepest parts of the facility, was the truth about humanity's history. About his history. What do I do now? Malcolm asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the revelation left him feeling small, insignificant, and yet somehow empowered. The robot's eyes softened, its red glow flickering as if in response to his uncertainty. You are the key, Malcolm Ray. You and the legacy of your ancestors. The galaxy is on the brink of understanding the truth about humanity. The choice is yours now. Malcolm stood in the cold, dim maintenance hall, feeling the magnitude of what he had just learned. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was a link to something lost, something that had the power to change everything. But how? He wondered. How do I unlock it all? And, more importantly, what would happen once the galaxy learned the truth? As he stared at the robot, a surge of determination washed over him. He wasn't going to let his ancestors' legacy remain hidden in the shadows. The truth needed to come out. Humanity's history wasn't a relic. It was the key to the future. I'll figure this out, Malcolm said, his voice firm, even as the gravity of the situation threatened to crush him. I'll bring the truth to light. Sentinel's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, acknowledging his resolve. Then let us begin, Master. The air felt colder as Malcolm turned away from the now silent Sentinel. The robot, once a terrifying presence, now stood as a reminder of the shocking truth that had been thrust upon him. The gravity of it all settled over Malcolm like a thick fog, and for a moment, he couldn't move. The past was no longer a distant concept. It was alive, waiting for him to uncover it. You're the key, the robot had said. The key. He still couldn't fully comprehend the weight of that statement. The bloodline of General Kellen Ray, his ancestor, had made him the gateway to unlocking humanity's forgotten legacy. But what did that really mean? Was the galaxy ready for the truth? Malcolm's thoughts were interrupted by the distant sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway. His stomach clenched. It was too soon for anyone to find him here, especially after what had just happened with the Ceruleans. He glanced toward the darkened elevator shaft where Krell and the others had fled, hoping they wouldn't return. But something told him they wouldn't be the last to find out about the ancient technology buried beneath the academy. A soft beep broke the silence, pulling his attention back to the robot. Sentinel's red eyes flickered as it began speaking, its voice low and steady. There are multiple sealed chambers beneath the academy. Each contains records, weapons, and technologies from humanity's most advanced era, the Reclamation Wars. Malcolm's heart skipped a beat. Weapons? Records? Technologies? The academy was constructed on top of an old military installation, built during the final years of the Reclamation Wars, Sentinel continued. The facility was designed to house humanity's most classified assets, its most dangerous technology, securing them from galactic powers who feared humanity's potential. Malcolm didn't know how to process the weight of what Sentinel was saying. An academy, a place meant to teach students, was built on top of a war base, a location hiding humanity's greatest secrets. It all seemed impossible. He had been in this building for months, walking its pristine halls, unaware of the truth that lay beneath. This place, it's a cover-up, Malcolm murmured under his breath. Yes, Sentinel responded. The Galactic Council knew humanity's growth would pose a threat to the established order. The Academy, under the guise of education, functions as a front to monitor and keep the truth hidden. The faculty, your professors, they've been complicit in keeping this knowledge buried. Malcolm's mind raced. The professors? They'd treated him like an outsider, an anomaly, but they hadn't told him the truth. Was that why they had made him feel like an outsider? Were they keeping him here, watching him, to ensure the secret remained safe? But why me? Malcolm asked, his voice cracking slightly. Why did they let me in? Why me specifically? Sentinel's eyes dimmed, as if calculating the response. Because your bloodline is connected to the key. The Reclamation Wars and their aftermath are a direct result of the military prowess and ingenuity of humanity. Your genetic code, Malcolm Ray, was specifically chosen to interact with this facility's systems. Your ancestor, General Kellen Ray, led the final assault against the Void Dominion. He is the one who established the protocols that later became the foundation for this installation's design. Malcolm's mind reeled. He was a descendant of a war hero, a leader who had shaped the galaxy's history, and the galaxy wanted to keep that history hidden? He had always thought his family was normal, with no special connection to the vast galactic past. But now, standing here, in a forgotten maintenance level beneath the academy, he realized the truth was far more complex. You're the only human alive who can unlock the full potential of this facility, Sentinel added. And with that, you can either restore humanity's rightful place in the galaxy, or destroy it. Malcolm took a deep breath. Restore humanity? Destroy it? What kind of decision was that to place on someone who had only wanted to survive at the academy? But how do I unlock it? Malcolm asked, his voice shaking. How do I activate everything? Sentinel's red eyes flickered as the robot processed the question. There are multiple access points within the facility. They require human genetic confirmation to open. However, to truly unlock the records, you must prove your worthiness to the system. The technology here recognizes only the direct descendants of the humans who fought in the Reclamation Wars. Your bloodline is the key. A part of Malcolm wanted to shut down, to forget everything the robot had said. It was too much to bear. But another part of him, the part that had been bullied, taunted, and humiliated every day for months, felt a surge of determination. He wasn't just going to be the token human in a school of aliens. He wasn't going to be forgotten like humanity had been. He had a chance to change everything. Where do I start? Malcolm asked, more decisively now. How do I unlock the chambers? Sentinel's eyes glowed brighter as it stepped toward a nearby panel on the wall, its movements smooth and deliberate. The primary access point is located beneath the Academy's central library. You must use your bloodline's genetic key to interact with the sealed chamber. The system will accept your DNA and grant you access to the archives within. Malcolm nodded, a plan beginning to form in his mind. But it wasn't just about unlocking old archives. The truth was buried here, under the Academy and hidden from the galaxy, and he was the one who could bring it to light. He wasn't sure what he would find down there, but it was humanity's history, his history, and it had to be told. There's only one problem, Malcolm said, his voice hardening. They're going to be watching me, aren't they? Sentinel paused, its mechanical frame humming as it processed the question. Yes. The Galactic Council is aware of your presence. Your bloodline has been tracked for centuries. They know you are the key, but they have yet to determine your role in unlocking the full extent of humanity's legacy. Malcolm's stomach tightened. The pressure was mounting, but he couldn't back down now. If the Council knew about him, then it was only a matter of time before they tried to stop him. But that wasn't going to happen. Not if he could help it. I need to get to the library, Malcolm said, his voice now determined. I need to find out what they're hiding, and I need to make sure humanity's legacy is never hidden again. As he turned to leave the maintenance level, a quiet sense of resolve settled in. It was no longer about surviving the Academy. It was about changing the course of history. He wasn't going to be a footnote in someone else's story. This was his moment, and whatever came next, he would face it with the courage of his ancestors. The narrow corridor felt colder as Malcolm made his way toward the library, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The world around him had shifted in the last few hours. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was the last link to a lost humanity. He had been chosen by fate, or by the forces that controlled the galaxy, to uncover the truth buried beneath the Academy's pristine walls. And now, as he walked toward the library, that truth was within his reach. But with the truth came consequences. There were always consequences. The Academy had been hiding humanity's history for centuries, and as much as Malcolm wanted to reveal everything, he knew the galaxy wouldn't just accept the truth. The Galactic Council had spent years erasing humanity's legacy. The implications of uncovering it, of showing the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of, could spark a conflict the likes of which no one had ever seen. He stopped for a moment, his hand resting on the cold metal of a wall as his mind raced. He wasn't just dealing with his future. He was dealing with the future of all humankind. What if the galaxy wasn't ready for the truth? What if it was better left buried? But deep down, Malcolm knew he couldn't hide from the past forever. The truth needed to come to light. Humanity's legacy had been erased for too long, and it was time for them to stand on their own again. But how? How could one person, one human, fight back against a council that had controlled the galaxy for centuries? He needed help. He needed to know what was really at stake. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway behind him, snapping him out of his thoughts. He spun around quickly, his heart leaping into his throat. His mind raced, wondering if the Academy's security had caught wind of his plans. But instead of security personnel, he found Laika and Taran walking toward him. The Luminar girl with the silver hair, and Taran, the Cerulean troublemaker with the mischievous grin. "You're not alone in this," Laika said, her voice calm but filled with determination. Her eyes, glowing a soft amber, studied him closely, as though she had seen the turmoil in his expression before he had even realized it himself. Malcolm gave her a small, grateful smile. "I know," he said, "but this isn't just about me anymore. It's about everything humanity has lost, everything that's been hidden from us." Taran raised an eyebrow, his silver earrings catching the light. "You don't have to do this alone. You've got allies now. We've been digging into the Academy's records. It's not just humanity that's been kept in the dark. The entire galaxy has been lied to. You're not the only one who wants to see the truth come out." Malcolm's heart thudded. For the first time, he didn't feel so alone in this. Taran, the Cerulean who had once been part of the group that tormented him, was standing with him now. And Laika, with her keen intellect and resourcefulness, had been a source of help ever since he'd met her. He wasn't just the human student anymore. He was part of something bigger, a movement that was about to change the entire galaxy. But there was still a problem, something he hadn't fully considered. "I'm not sure how to do this," Malcolm admitted. "I know I have to unlock the chambers, but I'm not sure the galaxy is ready for what's down there. The Council, they've erased our history for a reason. And if I expose the truth, I could start a war." Laika stepped closer to him, her silver hair flowing in the dim light. Her expression was serious but kind. "That's why you need to think carefully. You've been given the power to reveal the truth, Malcolm. But with that power comes responsibility. The galaxy might not accept humanity's legacy immediately. Some species might see it as a threat. Others may think humanity is coming to take over. But what if we could do it differently?" Malcolm asked, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "What if we could prove that humanity doesn't want domination? What if we could show them that we've learned from our past mistakes? I don't want a war. I don't want conflict." Taran looked at him, his expression serious for the first time. "It's not going to be easy. There will be resistance, no matter what. But you can't be afraid of what's to come. Sometimes, the hardest choices are the ones that change everything." Malcolm paused, the weight of their words sinking in. He wasn't just deciding the fate of humanity's legacy anymore. He was deciding the future of an entire galaxy. And there was no going back. Once the truth was out, things would never be the same. "I've been thinking about what to do next," Malcolm said, his voice growing more certain. "We need to reveal the truth, but we need to do it carefully. We need to convince the galaxy that humanity's history isn't a threat. We need to show them that we're not here to dominate. We're here to stand alongside them as equals." Laika smiled, her eyes glowing warmly. "That's the spirit. But the key is timing. If we push too fast, it could cause chaos. If we wait too long, it might be too late. We need a plan that brings people together, not pushes them apart." Malcolm nodded. He understood. This wasn't just about unlocking ancient technology or uncovering records that had been hidden for centuries. This was about bringing a divided galaxy together and showing them that humanity could be a force for peace, not just war. It was a bold plan, one that could either succeed or fail spectacularly. "You're right," he said, turning to face them both. "I've been too focused on what's down there, what's hidden. But it's not just about the technology. It's about how we use it. It's about how we show the galaxy that we belong." Taran grinned, his usual mischievous demeanor returning. "Now you're getting it. We'll help you, Malcolm. But you've got to lead the way. We can't do this without you." For the first time since discovering the truth about his bloodline, Malcolm felt a surge of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, and the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. But now, surrounded by allies who believed in the same cause, he felt ready. "I can't do this alone," he said, his voice steady. "But with you guys by my side, maybe we stand a chance." The three of them stood together in the quiet hallway, the weight of their decision looming over them. The doors to the library were just ahead. Beyond them, the truth waited. Hidden chambers, classified records, and a galaxy of unknowns. But Malcolm wasn't afraid anymore. He knew what had to be done. The truth would come out, and they would fight for humanity's place in the galaxy, no matter the cost. The silence in the library was broken only by the soft hum of the Academy's systems and the faint shuffle of Malcolm's footsteps. He walked with a sense of purpose now, the uncertainty that had gripped him in the early hours of this journey replaced by a clarity he hadn't known before. The past had been hidden, buried beneath layers of lies and corruption. But now, as he stood at the threshold of the ancient chambers, he felt like a bridge between two worlds, the forgotten humanity of the past and the uncertain future of the galaxy. Laika and Taran walked beside him, their expressions equally serious, though there was a flicker of excitement in their eyes. This was no longer just about opening doors. It was about unveiling a future where humanity could stand proud, not as outcasts, but as equals among the stars. "We're almost there," Taran said, his voice low as they approached the sealed chamber beneath the library. The air felt different here, thicker, heavier, like it was charged with the weight of centuries. Malcolm's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the panel beside the door, his fingers brushing over the smooth surface. The same symbols he had seen before, the glowing marks of an ancient system, one that could only recognize the blood of a ray. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat as he placed his palm against the panel. The last time he had done this, it had felt like an accident. But now, With everything on the line, he knew there was no turning back. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The walls were lined with what looked like holographic projections, maps of star systems, intricate designs, and weapon schematics that were far beyond anything he had ever seen. At the center of the room stood a sleek, cylindrical device pulsing with soft blue light, a quantum communicator, its sleek surface gleaming like a beacon. It was everything Malcolm had hoped for, and more. "This is it," Laika whispered, her voice filled with awe. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the data streaming from the walls. "This is humanity's true legacy. These systems, this technology, it's everything they erased." Malcolm stepped into the center of the room, feeling a hum in the air around him. It wasn't just the technology, it was the past, the weight of his ancestors' triumphs and mistakes, the history of a civilization that had shaped the galaxy, yet had been buried beneath layers of lies. The robot sentinel had told him that his bloodline was the key, and now, standing here, it felt like the universe itself was waiting for him to unlock it. "Now what?" Turan asked, his voice both eager and apprehensive. Malcolm looked at the quantum communicator, his hand hovering above it. He could feel its pull, the power it contained. But there was something else, something bigger than any device or weapon. The truth. Humanity's legacy wasn't just about weapons or technology. It was about the choices they had made and would make in the future. The galaxy didn't just need to see the past. It needed to see what humanity stood for. "It's time to choose," Malcolm said, his voice steady. "I'm not going to hide this anymore. The galaxy needs to know who we really are." Laika's eyes locked with his, and for a moment, there was an unspoken understanding between them. This was the moment. This was the choice. They could open this chamber, reveal humanity's past, and spark a revolution, or they could leave it buried and let the galaxy continue in ignorance. Malcolm turned toward the quantum communicator. The machine hummed louder now, as if anticipating his next move. He placed his hand on the control panel, feeling a surge of energy race up his arm. The device came to life, its blue light flashing brightly, and a holographic interface materialized above it. For the first time, he felt the full weight of the decision he was about to make. His hand hovered over the activation key. If he pressed it, the galaxy would know the truth. But would they be ready for it? Before he could make his choice, a voice rang out from behind them. "You're not the only one making choices, Ray." Malcolm froze, turning sharply toward the doorway. Standing there was Dean Pravis, flanked by several armed security officers. His face was a mixture of fury and control, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Malcolm, then at the quantum communicator. "I had a feeling you'd be down here," the Dean continued, his voice low and dangerous. "And I had a feeling this was going to happen." The tension in the room thickened instantly. The doors had closed behind them, locking them inside with the Dean and his officers. The sound of weapons being readied echoed through the chamber. "You're not going to stop this," Malcolm said firmly, his voice louder than he felt. "This isn't just about me anymore. This is about humanity's place in the galaxy. You can't control this." Dean Pravis stepped forward, his eyes cold. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. There are forces beyond your control, Malcolm. What you're about to do could rip the galaxy apart. Humanity doesn't belong at the center of everything. You think you're the key? You're not. You're a tool, a pawn in a much larger game." Malcolm felt a surge of anger, but he kept his composure. Maybe the galaxy needs to hear the truth. Maybe they need to know what they've been hiding. Humanity is not a threat. We've learned from our past, and we have a future among the stars. Dean Pravis smiled coldly, shaking his head. "You're naive, Ray. If you reveal what's down here, you'll ignite a war. And not just any war, one that humanity will lose." Malcolm's eyes flicked to the communicator. The choice was still his. Could he really reveal the truth? Could he risk everything? His future, humanity's future, on the belief that the galaxy was ready to change? "Maybe it's time for the galaxy to change," Malcolm said, his voice steady with newfound confidence. Before the Dean could respond, a soft beeping echoed from the communicator. The light in the room flickered, and the machine hummed with power. The interface shifted, and a single line of text appeared. "Activate transmission to Earth Prime Command." Malcolm stood there for a moment, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. He looked at Laika and Turan, their faces filled with quiet resolve. They were with him. They understood. This was bigger than just one person. This was about the future. He pressed the key. The machine hummed louder, the holographic interface lighting up as a voice crackled through the air. This is Earth Defense Command. Identify yourself and explain how you're accessing this channel. Malcolm's heart raced, but he didn't falter. This is Malcolm Ray. I'm a human student at Galactic Academy Primus. I've uncovered the truth about humanity's past, and I'm here to ensure the galaxy finally knows who we really are. The room went silent. The air felt thick with anticipation. And as the holographic display flickered with more text, Malcolm realized that the decision he had made, the choice, was only the beginning. The galaxy was listening. Humanity's voice was about to be heard. Dean Pravis stepped forward, his eyes burning with anger. "You've made a terrible mistake," he growled, his voice venomous. "You have no idea what you've just done." Malcolm turned to him, his expression resolute. "Maybe it's time someone did." As the room filled with the sound of transmissions being recorded, Malcolm knew that everything had changed. The galaxy was about to learn the truth. And humanity, his humanity, was no longer just an afterthought in the story of the stars. This was just the beginning.